Hello, movie patient, and welcome to Film Therapy. I am Brienne, also known as Miss Movies, also known as your film therapist. I am not a real therapist, but I like to play one on the internet just for this show. And my guest today is Greg Alba. Or not my guest, I should say my patient for today is Greg
It's
Alba.
been a rough day today.
Has it been rough?
It's been rough.
What has been rough?
I'm just thinking about all my traumas,
Okay, good.
all
We're
my
starting this off well. Good.
all my pains.
Okay. Which pains specifically?
um, I just I rewatched Suicide Squad,
Oh, that is a
and
pain.
it's been really rough. Reminded me of a lot of childhood memories
Mhm.
of abuse, and
Okay.
I'm really glad. Should I give you my copay now?
Sure.
Okay.
It's $20
Do you,
plus 25 cents because you did swear on the last show that we did.
I'm
I'm just
sorry.
kidding. Ladies and gentlemen,
This is gonna be a real thing one day.
it will be.
We're therapy through talking about films. I
It
feel like it's
is.
gonna.
It's a real thing right now. We're on
I
the
feel
show.
like people will one day pay you like,
Greg,
to actually come on.
for those that do not know you,
Yes,
please tell the audience who you are, what you're all about, all that good stuff.
my name is Greg Alba. I was born in Los Angeles, California. Raised American. I have a YouTube channel called The Real Rejects, where we
Mhm.
do trailer reaction reviews and movie reviews and other movie talk. And it's a really fun channel.
Which
Sorry.
I'm going to be on
She will be
soon.
on one day. Brienne will be on there. We're scheduling her for January.
Yes.
Just waiting for the right trailer. Hopefully, it drops the day she's scheduled to come on.
Yes. That's what we need.
I'm excited to be here. Film therapy. I've seen a couple of ones. The last one I just saw was with Jeremy Johns,
Oh, nice.
who is
Nice.
nothing compared to me.
He has a lot of happiness, and I'm thankful for him.
Yeah, awesome, spectacular.
He's very
Yeah.
happy. I love it. I am not so happy.
Ooh.
So it was kind of like the yin and yang, you know?
Right. You are a very
Mhm.
depressed human
I
being.
am. It exudes through my voice
Yeah.
because I have that NPR style to it.
What people think is calm and relaxing is
Uh-huh.
really just pure depression on
And
your end,
anger
and
that I'm
anger,
trying to
a lot of
suppress.
suppressed feelings.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. So let me tell those that don't know a little bit about this show. This is a storytelling show where I will ask the patient three questions. It's the same three questions each time. The first question is, what is a movie that inspires you? The second question is, what is a movie or a scene from a movie that triggers a memory for you? Perhaps it's painful or it could be happy. And what is a film that helps you through difficult times? Those are the three core questions. I started this show because I do suffer from depression,
Hmm.
and I feel like movies are a way that help me through that depression.
Yes.
So I just want to remind anyone that's out there that may be suffering from something right now that's pretty serious to call your doctor or go to the hospital or call 911 because it's very important that you get the help that you need.
Well, if you want to get really real, then like
Yes.
that with your awesome intro, it was only it's been about 6 months where I got off all my medication.
Wow. Congratulations.
4 or 5 years ago, I was diagnosed
Hmm.
with PTSD,
Okay.
ADHD, and type 2 bipolar.
Wow.
So I was on lamotrigine, 200 milligrams, Abilify, 10 milligrams, and Zoloft, 200 milligrams, and Adderall, 40 milligrams. And on top of that,
That's a
too, I
lot.
smoked a lot of weed.
Okay.
So, but about 6 months ago, after years of therapy, I started weaning off my medication, and I am now I meditate now and I exercise. And, like to do a lot of that. And I will say that movies were the best form. I didn't realize it until much later. When people constantly
Hmm.
tell you movies are escapism,
Right.
I didn't feel that until recently when I realized they have been my escapism.
Hmm.
They are the way I've learned how to, like, my personality of how it's developed is really derived from characters I've seen from TV and movies. The way I've learned to communicate and interact with people is from TV and movies. So movies have been my number one thing that have really allowed me to live different lives. And so, yeah, this is a great segment. It's a cool segment.
Do you find yourself missing any of those medications sometimes? Are you like, oh, I wish I
No,
still took this or anything like that?
no, I'm really happy. I'm honest. Like there have been times, like in recent months, where it's been really rough in certain personal experiences, but I can tell you that like learning to cope without them has been really it's rewarding in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
its own ways. It definitely is. I mean, at first it was scary. I definitely had to wean off. Had to
Yeah.
talk with my therapist every single week because there were times where I did want it. Adderall was probably the hardest one.
Uh-huh.
Learning to just focus without that medication was the toughest one. But you do get to a point where you can rewire your brain enough, I feel, to do it. But it hasn't been a full year yet. But I feel like once I'm at a full year, I
Right.
can really be more vocal about it. You know?
Man, that's hard. I went off of a medication, not not on that same scale, but my doctor, which I've talked about before, for those that watch the show regularly, but for those that don't, um, my doctor told me that I needed to stop birth control because I had been having suicidal thoughts, and I had
Mm,
had those for 17 years. And he was like, "Well, how long have you been taking birth control?" And
gotcha.
like as soon as he said that, I was just like, I just started crying because I knew that that's the reason why I was having those thoughts, because that was the
Yeah.
only connector. So then he just said, "We're gonna take you off of that," and then we had discussed like putting me on another medicine, like to help with that, with relieving those thoughts. And I said, "Why don't we just do nothing and see how this works first?"
Hmm.
And like if it has, if it's not getting better,
Okay.
maybe then he's like, because that's gonna be. It really was the answer. I mean, he said it's not going to
Yeah.
go away entirely because you've dealt with it for so long,
Hmm.
but we'll get rid of that. We'll put you in therapy, which he didn't put me in therapy. He just said, go get therapy, which kind of sucks sometimes because you wish that someone would like just throw you that
Yeah.
rope, like, hey, I got
Yeah.
this appointment for you. Like, where's my
Yeah.
mom?
Yeah.
I need a mom that's
Yeah.
like gonna like go get that appointment for me. But
How long have you been in
yeah,
therapy?
a year now. So that's good.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And then I've been
Congratulations.
off that medicine. I went off that medicine, I remember, March 17th of
Okay,
not
congrats.
this past year, but the year before. So,
That's great.
so
That's
there you go.
fantastic.
Which sometimes I do miss. I'm not
Yeah.
going to lie, for just certain purposes of my life, with my husband, I miss that. But
Yeah.
other than that, actually, you know what's interesting? If we're going to get really real on this podcast right now, slash vodcast, like I noticed also after going off of that medicine, like my sex drive actually increased, which is crazy. But I know
Yes,
that,
I
and
will
then I was
agree
like,
with
oh
that
yeah, that's
actually.
like actually
Yeah.
who knew?
Yeah.
Like, well, I guess the doctors knew because they were like, this does suppress, birth control does suppress those feelings.
Well, if we're
So
gonna keep the real thing going,
get the real thing
if we're gonna
going.
keep saying that we're gonna keep it real, yeah, I used to have like sex was actually something that would be a little bit more challenging at times, or
Hmm.
finishing was harder. Now I do notice that I'm better.
Yeah.
Change the
See,
topic there.
who knew?
Better, yeah,
All this medicine is causing
yeah,
some issues, and now
yeah.
we're
Oh
we're better
man,
because of it. So I think my husband is happy that I'm not on
good.
I'm not on that anymore,
Yeah.
and I am too. So that's nice. All right, so let's get into our first question. Our first question is, what is a movie that inspires you?
Okay, just to clarify, because I have a couple of answers, but I'll go with
Okay.
one just to clarify. When you say mood that inspires me,
Mhm.
does that mean in any category of inspiration?
Yes. I like to keep it vague because if you ever want to return on this
Yeah.
podcast, then you have another answer. But it could be like something that this inspired me to write this book, or this inspired me to do this show, or this inspired me to be on YouTube all the time now
Yeah, yeah.
because I watched Social Network and I was like, cool.
Well, I know one of the later questions is going to be what's the film that gets you through hard times, and that was originally going to be my inspiration
Hmm.
film because
Okay,
I feel like they kind of go hand in hand.
they do. They can.
But for this one, just to keep more variety, I will say a cliche movie that is known to be very inspirational, but I did watch it when I was young, and it did have a great impact on me, and that was the first Rocky movie. Um,
Nice.
I wasn't someone who was heavily about exercise growing up,
Hmm.
and I was a lot thinner growing up, but I wasn't heavily about exercise. But that movie I remembered after I watched it, I started doing like a bunch of push-ups. I learned how to do one hand push-ups,
Oh, that's
and
no joke.
but it was also the mentality that it helped give me in order
Hmm.
to that ability of like really going not making me aware of how your mentality is really the all determining factor in everything that you do. And I feel
Hmm.
like those are the best kind of inspirational tales where it's more than just the physical challenges, because people can easily look at a movie like Rocky and look at it from the physical standpoint that he had to train and everything. And I did start running, I did start exercising, but I was also into martial arts at the time.
Hmm.
And it was something that made me want to be a better fighter, and learning how to be a better fighter taught me how to, just not give up and to not quit. And sometimes you got to take a beating, and sometimes you got to get knocked down, but it's about just keep moving. And that's what I love about Rocky and all those films is he
Hmm.
gets his ass handed to him for most of the movies.
Right.
Like any movie Rocky fights in, even the ones he wins the match in, he's getting his ass kicked. And Rocky's whole thing is he just can't go down, and he
Hmm.
can't he can't just he can't go down by knockout.
Yeah, it's not
And
how hard you hit;
yeah. Yeah,
it's
and
how
there's a
hard you get hit.
it's that great speech in Rocky Balboa as
Hmm.
well. So to link it down to just one Rocky movie would be hard, because I feel like from Rocky even all the way to Creed, that whole franchise, even the cheesy, dumb, corny ones like Rocky 3 and 4, I still feel have inspirational moments in there as well. And that's something that's really taught me a lot about, I don't know, like getting into exercise at that
Yeah,
early age, because I've definitely fallen off of exercise and I gained a lot of weight at one point. Now I'm getting back
it's
into it.
all cycles of
Yeah,
life.
yeah, exactly, exactly. That is definitely one film for sure. I feel like my answer for the movie that gets me through hard times will be better, but that is
Rocky Five, though.
Rocky
Let's just
Five.
talk about that for a second, because I find that not inspirational. You know what? I feel like it had to happen though, because I feel like although Rocky Balboa didn't come quick enough after Rocky Five, but I
Yeah,
feel like we had to see a downfall of him, and
yeah.
then so he can kind of
What I'll say
come
about
back
Rocky
up.
Five is that that's a big fear I think a lot of people have. Like if you take out the quality of the film, just take it out, you just look at what the story is about, and about how this man went from nothing to something huge and back
Mhm.
to nothing. But what mattered was that he changed. If you look at
Yes.
it like that, is like maybe his circumstances are all different. Maybe his, like the materialistic things, the homes he lives in, where his kid can go to school and all that has changed. And while
Hmm.
that has an impact, who he is as a person, his mentality, his philosophy towards life, his heart is what allows him to keep moving and still manage to have a future in some aspect. Maybe he didn't
Yeah.
get glorified rich again, but he still had that reputation and that legendary status that allowed him to still keep moving,
Right.
you know?
So even though people discount Rocky Five because
It's a
it's
shit
not
movie.
great,
Yeah,
I
it's a
feel
bad
like
movie.
it is needed because
Yeah.
we got to see that like up and down
Yeah,
of that
absolutely.
character. But
Absolutely.
then to just leave it for so long and not like bring it back to
Yeah.
the up kind of was like, oh, why'd we do
Yeah,
that?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I gotta say, with Rocky Balboa, man, with Rocky 6, that was awesome, because I remember when they
Hmm.
announced that, everyone was like, "What?
Yeah.
You're like 60 something. You can't do this."
Right.
But then
And then he's in the movie like,
yeah.
I'm 60. I
Yeah.
can't do this.
Then in the movie, when I remember watching in the theaters, and it was like watching the old school Rocky films again, where
Hmm.
every time he gets hit, you feel the hit,
Yeah.
you feel
Oh,
it,
yeah.
and when he lands a punch, you feel him landing that punch, and it was great. So
Let's discuss the order of which I've seen the Rocky
okay,
films because I
what's
like
your
to see things out of order, as
right,
we all
right?
know.
What's your order?
I saw Rocky Balboa first.
Okay,
I saw parts of Rocky 4, like all throughout Rocky 4's existence. So I feel like at some point I saw the whole film, but maybe I didn't.
okay,
I wasn't sure. It's one of
okay.
those things where I'm like, did I see that entire movie? Who knows? But anyways, so Rocky Balboa, parts of 4, and then nothing.
Right. Okay.
And so then Creed was about to come out, and Rocky came to Netflix. And someone was like, if you haven't seen Rocky and you call yourself a movie lover, like you
Right.
shouldn't be calling yourself a movie lover. I was like,
Right.
okay, I guess I should. So I then went and watched the entire
Did you love?
5
Did you love
films.
Rocky 1?
Yes, yes.
I
But
love Rocky 1.
2 is my favorite.
Growing up. 2 was my favorite.
Yeah.
I think in terms of film quality, I still find Rocky 1 the best, but Rocky 2, that's the one where you're like, champion, you
Yes.
know?
And the reason I like it better is because Creed feels like he has something to prove
Yeah,
and he also has something to lose. And
yeah,
so I feel like that character is more developed and I liked him so much that I was like
right.
I enjoyed this movie
Well,
more because of that.
Rocky 2 is more direct in plot because
Mhm.
it's a rematch story. This guy
Yes.
wants to just own
Yeah.
Rocky.
And I like that it just picks up
Yeah,
from the last movie, like the
yeah, they're like
last
going to the
frame.
hospital, right?
And here
Yeah,
we go.
and yeah, it's more direct. But I mean, the problem with Rocky 2 for me is actually the way the fights, the match is shot.
Hmm.
Because what I loved about the first match in Rocky 1 was it was done in such a realistic way. A lot of times you can
In
tell
the
they're not
ring.
getting hit.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh
but
yeah, those first
yeah,
ones.
yeah.
Yes, it's like, what is
Yeah,
this?
it's pretty obvious. But I still thought the way they captured it, the way they framed it, the long takes, the
Mhm.
far away shots, felt more realistic. I felt with Rocky 2, a lot of it was really edited, a lot of fancy camera movement.
Mm.
And so it took me out of the realm a little bit more. They even, I mean, the only time where I felt it was really effective was the slow motion countdown when they're doing
Mm.
10, 9, and then Rocky's trying to get up. And even though I knew he was going to win, I was still like, first time watching that, I'm like, oh my God, get up,
Yes.
Rocky. I want you to win.
The lovely possum says we need a Rocky 2 ending with
Yeah,
Greg
yeah,
in the
that would be great.
Schmodown.
I
Yes, Greg and John in the Schmodown need a Rocky 2 ending.
I feel like
Agreed.
thank you, lovely possum. I feel like Stallone just wants to be a motivational speaker, and he kind of just
He
does it
should
through his
be.
movies. Because I saw some of
Hmm.
was Driven,
Sure.
the one, the racing movie he
Uh-huh.
wrote and directed that like really canned his career for a while. But a lot
Poor
of
guy.
that is like it's a terrible film, but there's moments where it's like that's a great motivational speech he just gave though, you know. So I feel like I feel like Stallone really does I feel like he really has this like
He is
there's a
such an
motivational
artist
speaker
and I
side in
feel
him.
like people don't they think of him as the face and him as his characters and not as like an actual like artist and
He's an artist.
writer and
He's
director
a
and like
I mean
an
Rocky 1
incredible
it's
person.
a great perform every time he does like he got nominated for Creed and I remember like the first drama I think I ever saw him in was Copland.
Mm, that
And
was a good one.
yeah, and he was great in it. And I mean,
Hmm.
he's the lead, and he's leading like De Niro is supporting and
Hmm.
Keitel is supporting, but he's the main actor. And I thought he did a fantastic job. I mean, because he seems like more of the like if you look at those actors, you're like he should probably be the least led one, but he does an amazing job. He's not an action hero at all in that film.
I could talk about Stallone probably all day, but let's get to our second question, which is what is a film or a scene from a film that triggers a memory for you? Perhaps it's painful, perhaps it's happy.
Mine's kind of a melancholy choice.
Okay.
I've seen people come on your show, your session,
Yes.
usually give like happy memories. Mine is technically a happy moment in a film, but it really does tug at my heart, and it might seem like an odd choice. Uh, do you remember the movie Liar Liar at all?
Yes.
There's that scene after the airport where Jim Carrey's trying to get to his son and just tell him that he loves him,
Hmm.
and then he gets injured and he's in the what's that, the gurney, and then his son comes up to him and he gives this speech to his son about how all he wants is to be there for him and that he loves him. And every single time I watch that scene, every single time I start to cry. Anything to do, my dad passed away about 3 years ago, three and
Hmm.
a half years ago. And I mean, I saw a movie way before he died, but I did have a troubling relationship with my dad. There was the major ups and downs, and that feeling of connection and being that feeling like that. It makes me feel like that boy who just wants that love from his dad.
Hmm.
And for him to receive it it really tugs at my, like it hits me in a hard spot in my heart where
Yeah.
it hits me in a hard spot in my heart where I really do start to tear up because I feel like a lot of us, especially at least in California, feel like they don't really get the proper connection from their dad and the love from their dad. Because, I noticed my dad was he was sick for most of my life,
Mm.
And but I noticed a cliche with a lot of people's dads is that their dad is constantly away at work, and then when they come home, they just want to, like, what's the word, decompress. They don't.
Right.
It's not really about taking the time and effort and energy to connect with their children and spend quality time and give their heart to their kids. It's more like, let's eat dinner, watch TV, let's go out somewhere. But it's not really about getting to know your kid. And that's all I ever wanted. I felt like growing up, my dad, the only thing I could really talk about with my dad was movies, and that's what gave me my love for movies.
Hmm.
Was that was the one thing we could consistently talk about on a positive note was movies. But getting to know me and my and who I am, that was something I really wanted him to know about me, and I didn't really feel like I ever got the chance to give that to him. And I wish he was around to see all the YouTube success I've had. But
Yeah.
but yeah, if I was to give you an answer, it would be that scene in Liar Liar that constantly really gets to me.
Because 3 years ago, you were doing Real Rejects 3 years ago, though, right?
We started we like created the channel in 2012 of December, and then January we started uploading. Didn't have success until 2014.
Hmm.
2014 is when we started gathering subscribers. That's
Yes.
when people started.
Casting that net,
Yeah, first year we
bringing
got
them all in.
1,400 followers, I think. Second
Okay.
year we got 75,000
Ooh,
followers.
it's a
So
big jump.
yeah, that's when things started really changing.
Did you see Liar Liar with your dad?
No, I
Okay.
did not see Liar Liar with my dad.
What are some movies you saw with him that you were like, "Hey, Dad, this really rings true to us"?
uh, I don't know if I've seen movies where it really rang true to him and I, but he was the man who introduced me to a lot. He showed me The Godfather. He
Hmm.
showed me like the Pacino and De Niro films,
Yeah,
like all the great, like Raging Bull. He never censored me. I don't know if that's done some psychological effect on me,
maybe.
but that's a very important aspect to my life. Was
Hmm.
I was never censored. My best friend John
Yeah.
here in the room. John and I have known each other since first grade. We went to school
Aw.
since first grade, so we've been best friends for like 20 years or something. And John was very much censored. And I was the kid growing up in school who was never censored. It didn't matter how much nudity was in the film. I saw the movie Species with my dad in the theaters. And I saw Hannibal with my mom when I was a kid in the theaters.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
like it didn't matter how much sex or
Yeah.
violence there was. I was
They're like,
watching
we
it.
don't have a babysitter, so
Yeah.
you're coming with us.
So I think that's why my favorite films tend to be R-rated flicks, even though I
Yeah.
just talked about Rocky and Liar Liar.
Hmm.
I feel like the R-rated flicks tend to be that for me. The drama. I'm trying to think of films that my dad felt like he was that person. You ever seen the movie Donnie Brasco?
No, Johnny Depp.
Yeah, it's Johnny Depp and Al Pacino, and
Hmm.
this was a very vital film to my dad. Um, yeah, he showed me this film. In that film, Johnny Depp is infiltrating a mob, and he's undercover
Okay,
detective.
like The Departed.
Yeah, exactly. And Al Pacino vouches for him. He's the one who has trust in this guy, but they develop this really close father son like relationship. But Al Pacino, he keeps getting the short end of the stick. He's not exactly the high guy of the mob family. It's
Okay.
different than other Pacino roles. He's kind of looked at as a loner, a little bit of a loser. People walk all over him. He's used a lot,
Hmm.
and that's how my dad constantly felt in life. He
Mm.
constantly felt that people were always walking all over him and that he couldn't say no to people when he wanted to. He was like rather codependent on the need for people's approval.
Right.
And it led to him just, and then he would blame and take it out. And that was a film where he would watch and he would say, I feel like I'm that guy, you know?
Mm.
So there's no movies I saw
Interesting.
where I was like father son. This relates to my
Yes.
dad, but that
Star
was
Wars.
yeah.
Yes.
My dad did love Star Wars. So he loved it all. My dad loved the big ones.
When you say that your father was sick
Mhm.
growing up, can you expand on that?
Yeah, he had diabetes. It started with that, and then it got really bad where he started losing circulation in
Mm.
the blood flow in his feet.
Right.
And this is all progressed from the time I was a little like a baby, and then eventually in my lifetime, I think he survived about 3 heart attacks,
Wow.
and then he eventually developed kidney failure, renal failure, and then he had to go on dialysis, and then he was around for a year while on dialysis, and then one day he died in his sleep, fortunately, because he was always in
Mm.
pain, constantly,
Oh
constantly in
man.
physical pain. But he managed to die in his sleep, and had a little smile on his face when he died. So it was peaceful. He had a major temper problem. He was a really angry guy, but yeah, that was wasn't expecting to go this deep, but fuck it. We're this far, aren't we?
We're this far.
Yeah,
Because
we've
like
come this
I've
far.
just seen slight parallels. Like my mom was the one that introduced me to movies.
Okay.
She definitely we watched The Godfather.
Nice.
She likes to spoil things though, so I never ask her what movie. If I ask her what movie she's seen, immediately right to the spoiler like, yeah, they did this. I was like, could you just not like do that, mom? But like when we were watching Godfather, it was like, is this the part where he dies? It was like right before he
Oh
died,
man.
one of the main characters, and I was just like, mom, don't.
No.
Like, I feel like this is the part where he dies, and I'm like, I know you've seen this before, and I know you're showing this to me for a reason. Don't do
Hmm.
that. And then I always felt like she didn't have diabetes, but she was always I felt like she was always very sick.
Okay.
Like anytime like at least once a month she would be sick for a good 2, 3 days, like
Hmm.
in her room, ill. And I just felt like that was an ongoing thing my entire
Right.
life.
Right.
And I never really understood what was happening. She had like terrible migraines.
Hmm.
I'm sure she still gets that as well.
Did she
Um,
have mental struggles as well?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Because my dad definitely did. My dad came
Mhm.
from a really really fucked up upbringing,
Mm,
and to not disclose, because some of his brothers and sisters are still alive, and I
mhm.
don't want to disclose all their personal facts,
Sure.
but it was like he grew up in like the 50s and 60s
It's a
in New
different
York, and
upbringing time, yes.
his dad was feared by
Mhm.
everyone. And to this day, if I talk to any of my grandfather, I never met him. He's been dead for decades now.
Mhm.
But anytime I talk to one of my uncles or aunts about him, they start to cry, and it's usually led by fear. And they're
Wow.
glad that there's a part that's like that guilt of, I'm kind of glad he's dead because he terrified me. Like,
Right.
so he was a really, really fucked up guy, and I'm glad I never got to meet him. But my dad had never
Right.
got to go to therapy to deal with any of that. And so
Because therapy, I'm sure at that time, I wasn't
frowned
really,
upon. Yeah.
yeah, you don't go to therapy and you don't talk. This is why it's hard. This is why I kept, not talking about my suicidal thoughts like secret
Hmm.
for 17 years because there's that fear of like, do other people have this?
Right,
Am I the
right,
only one feeling
right.
this? Like, I never, I mean, honestly, I can't keep a secret to save my life. Like, this was the one thing that I was like, I don't know why, but for some reason, because I feel like I'm the only one in my family struggling with this, like, I just would never share that with
Right,
anyone.
right.
So
Well,
when
that's
I,
why I was asking if your mom
yeah,
had it too or something.
you know what? I don't think she did, but I know, you know what? Her aunt had, like, I know for sure was in like a mental hospital for a while.
Okay.
So I know that there was a breakdown at some point. Um,
Hmm.
and I don't know exactly what that looks like. I know that she said that her aunt, she was with her when like it happened in terms of like having a breakdown and not understanding. And I know that she said something like, she just started talking about our relatives and saying, "Oh, this person died," and it was like, "No, that person's still alive." And she's like,
Hmm.
"No, I know that they're not here anymore." And then you couldn't convince her otherwise. So I
Wow.
know there's that in the family.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah, we're definitely in a different day and age. I feel like almost
hmm,
everyone I know was been in therapy or is
right,
starting to go to therapy.
yeah, and I
It,
think that's great.
and young and people like in their early 20s, I'm noticing, are
Hmm.
starting to go too, which is awesome. I think it's better to start as soon as you can, because I don't know, it's something so, I think, necessary in my life at least.
Right. Because I feel like because therapists weren't necessarily around before, I mean, they probably were, but very little,
Yeah,
and it was a stigma and stuff like that. The only option you had was like a mental hospital.
exactly.
And so now that we don't really have those types of
Yeah.
institutions anymore.
People felt like they needed to go to therapy before if there was something is seriously wrong with you. So
Hmm.
you have to go now because we got to figure you out. now
Right.
it doesn't have to be as intense, and also I think a lot more people are not as secretive.
Mhm.
Like I definitely used to be very suicidal. I have like you might see like these little marks here on my arms,
Mhm.
and I used to cut myself a lot, and I had to go to the psych unit about 3 times. I think they had to check me in, and like I hated it. Hated being. You ever had to go
Because
to the
you
psych
have to
unit?
be there for what, 2
Two,
days?
3 days,
Okay.
72-hour hold. I hated it. It was so boring. And it was the number one motivating
Like, we're
factor.
here to take your vitals again.
Yeah.
It's only been an hour. We're
It
back
was,
to take your vitals.
it was my number one reason to not do it again. It got to the point
Oh.
where I was like, I just can't come back here. It is so boring here. This is kind of
You're
killing
like,
me
"This
more
is
by
not
being
One
here.
Flew Over the
Yeah.
Cuckoo's
Yeah,
Nest."
exactly. Because I go there and there are people who were like definitely like needed to be there. And I felt like I could get to a point where I didn't need to be here. But that's what started putting me on a lot of
Mhm.
medication, was because I was getting so much suicidal thoughts. Because I started going to therapy because I couldn't remember the first. I was like 20 something, and I couldn't remember my whole life. Now I can recall a lot of memories, but at the time I couldn't remember my whole life. And then when I started going, I started uncovering my past. And then one day it just hit me like a tidal wave. Just I remembered it all. And I couldn't shut off my thoughts. And I kept thinking like I was in the past. And then I started hurting myself, and I started wanting to kill myself. And then eventually I got to a new therapist who helped me like with coping skills.
Mhm.
Because I feel like that's where I kind of went wrong. I feel like you should learn how to cope, have coping skills for present day circumstances, and then
Right.
dive into the past. I felt like I dove way too in the past first and had no idea how to handle it. So that was like my little circle of life.
Yeah, learning to cope
Yeah.
is extremely important. And some of the things my therapist does, I'm like, what are we doing? Why are we doing
Yeah.
this? And then
Yeah.
I realize, oh, there
Yeah.
is a reason behind all this breathing and
Yes.
picturing and things like that. I'm like, really? Is this what this is supposed to be? But then I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, it is actually.
I know this isn't film talk, but the first character I've ever seen was on a TV show, and it was Dexter.
Uh-huh.
And I know he's a serial killer, but it was the first character I've ever seen, because in the first show, in the episode, he opens his box of donuts and there's nothing in there, and he goes empty, like me. And that was the first time I ever heard that. And
Hmm.
that was the only way I could have described the way how I naturally felt for most of my life, was just
Wow.
empty. And similar to the character of Ryan Gosling in Drive, I felt that Ryan Gosling's performances
Yes.
is the first. Well, I mean, if we could talk about this in film therapy for a second, Ryan Gosling's performances in like Half Nelson, Drive, uh, Place
Place
Beyond
Beyond the
the
Pines.
Pines, Blue Valentine. He was the first actor who I saw portray like this depressed, empty state of mind, and that I felt I could identify with. It was the
Mm.
first actor ever. Like, I've always admired Pacino, I've always admired De Niro, I've always admired that. But Gosling was the first actor ever where I really felt like I feel that way. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel that way. So it's movies, it's performances like that have really helped me a lot. Like, those are the kind of life-saving performances that I've had, is because those roles help you feel like you're not so alone, that you have
Yeah.
something to identify with. If they're creating a character like it, you mustn't be
Hmm.
alone in this
You see
world.
your
Yeah.
when you see yourself on screen,
Yeah,
you're like, oh
exactly.
man, I can identify with this.
Exactly. And I just want to be Ryan Gosling in general, you
Well,
know?
I do too.
Yeah.
Let's get to our last question, which is, what is a movie that helps you through difficult times?
Okay, that's an easy answer for me.
Okay,
It's Eminem's 8 Mile.
good. Oh, hey.
um, 8 Mile to me, I think, is one of the most unique stories of success, because it's not about his rise to power. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Because it's not about his rise to power.
Hmm.
The whole movie is about all the shit he had to go through in order to start that journey of becoming successful.
Yeah.
Because the movie ends on that note.
Right.
Like, because a lot of people thought it was going to be like, oh, this is Eminem's inspirational story of him rising to fame, but it's
Yeah,
anything
no.
but that.
It's like the very,
It's like,
very
yeah,
touchstone of,
like he has no
okay.
dad. He has this
Hmm.
horrible relationship with his mom. He's broke. The woman he's falling in love with cheats on him.
Hmm.
Like he chokes when he tries to do his art, his passion. And then he gets to that point that I feel like a lot of people eventually have to get to, of I don't give a shit anymore. I don't care what people think of me anymore. And that's kind of like when I started this channel and I broke into Ryan Wright, that was kind of like my alter ego for doing that.
Mm.
Of like, I'm gonna be all the things that people say you shouldn't do on the internet. I'm gonna do a bunch of crazy perverted comments, racist jokes,
Yes.
sexist. I'm just gonna do whatever I can because it's so opposite of what other people want. And while I did enjoy that, it was also a part of my life that was like it was a reflection of some dark times in my life at the time too. So when I started getting
Mhm.
past that, I had to let Ryan Wright go. But anyway, back to
Was
8 Mile.
that a decision that you personally made, or did
Yeah.
anyone say, like, I think it's time for this to
Well,
go
I mean, I've
away?
never talked about this on the internet. um, but one of the few things that like this was an aspect. It wasn't the entirety of it. On the only one of the aspects was my ex girlfriend at the time. Had a very public breakup with her because I was an idiot and I made a video because I was so in turmoil, and I tried taking down that video. Other people re-uploaded it.
Oh, as you do.
Yeah, right. And when I did so, and I did say I made a comment that made it sound like I was canning Ryan Wright all because of her, and I'll take this time to really clarify that. What I was saying by that was like my ex girlfriend. She's this like beautiful woman, talented actress, talented singer, and then the world knew her to date this slob, lazy, perverted douchebag on the Real Rejects, and anytime women came on or whatever, I would just be like really act really horny and and it seemed like and it got to the point where I did feel like this is disrespectful to her because people know
Mm.
we're dating and yet I'm like coming across like I don't even give a shit that I have a girlfriend. All
Sure.
for an act, but people don't realize it's an act. People think I'm really Ryan Wright.
Right.
And it did get to a point where I started being known as the king of dick jokes, and I didn't want to be that guy anymore. I was like, I didn't set out to have that image, and now I've created that for myself. So that was one aspect with like, if I ever date someone again or whatever, I just don't want them to feel like I'm gonna like completely neglect them at all. And two was I didn't want that to be my image. I felt like I had more range than that and
Mhm.
more kind of I wanted to show I could have humor in more ways than just because people expected dick jokes from me all the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm sick of trying to come up with dumb because the whole idea of my sex jokes was making fun of how stupid sex jokes can be,
Sure.
how obvious they are. And I honestly think sex jokes are usually the laziest form of comedy. I usually think they're the easiest go-to jokes is a sex
Mhm.
joke. So I was making fun of that. And then it got to a point where I was like, well, now people think this is the only kind of humor I have. And so like when I do sketches or short films, I like to show that I can do more jokes than
Right.
just that, But that's why I did can Ryan Wright. But anyway, back to 8 Mile.
8
Ryan
Mile.
Wright was like my Slim Shady
Okay.
in terms of like this is my alter ego. um, but when it came to 8 Mile, that's that movie that really does show me because when he has that last rap battle at the end, I feel that it's like watching Rocky in the ring. I
Yeah.
feel that.
You were at that concert. You
Yeah,
were in there
exactly.
with
Because
his little
when he
buddies.
starts getting like the crowd to chant like
Yeah.
the 313 his numbers, and then he gets the main rapper to choke like, and it was all because like if you pay close attention, the first two rap battles he does his thing. He owns with insults. The third rap battle, he just uses everything this guy could say about him.
Right.
He
That's the
just
best
yeah,
part. He
yeah,
turns it around so that
yeah.
guy has nothing to say now
So
because
he
he's already said it all.
exactly he
Yes.
owns all of his shit and he just takes it in like, hey, I'm broke. I live in a trailer park. My girl fucks someone else. All this stuff. And it's like, now what can you say about me? Because I already beat you to it,
Yeah.
and which allows him to win. And I think that's a great message. And I love how at the end he doesn't go out and celebrate and party. He's
Mhm.
like, I'm just gonna go back to work because now I just gotta do that because he's showing he's committing to his work ethic. Like I gotta pay my bills, but I'm also gonna work on my rapping at the same time. And
Yeah.
there's one quote I heard many years ago that was life changing for me was work full time on your job and part time on your fortune.
Mhm.
And then eventually your fortune will become your full time income. And so that's kind of like what YouTube was for me. I was working at a doctor's office 40 hours a week, and then I was working YouTube about 20 to 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
And then eventually YouTube just became my income. And so that's why I think 8 Mile is definitely the one that when times are rough, that's the one that really gets to me.
I like it. I
I
like
hope I've
8
given
Mile.
you some good answers.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
this has been quite the session. Um, gosh, I haven't seen 8 Mile in a long time, but I do watch like the end rap battle
Yeah.
often because it's like, oh,
You just look it up on
obviously,
YouTube.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it's amazing.
No,
It's
when I
amazing.
watch that rap battle, I tend to know if I'm watching it, I know all the lyrics.
Of
Yeah.
course. I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I don't, but maybe I do. And R.I.P. Brittany Murphy. It's
Oh
all
yeah,
sad.
that's
I miss
right. That's
her.
right. Yeah.
She's one of those where
I
you could,
forget she passed
yeah,
away, I
I
forget that.
know, and you could see like, um, she definitely was like on the road to being like an even bigger star and more like in on screen presence like a Nicole Kidman or something like that. I could definitely see her in that.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but yeah, passed too soon. What's really bizarre, I believe her husband died like shortly after her.
Oh really?
And they think there is something like
It's a
I
drug
don't
overdose
know
she died over?
I don't know. It was like something like they think it's something that was in their house, like asbestos or something like that. I don't know. I
Hmm.
don't remember the story, but it was something similar. I gotta
That's
look it up
tragic.
again. But
That is tragic.
anyways, sad for Brittany Murphy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Greg, for being on the show.
Of course.
And
Fun.
so much
So much
stuff.
funny in
Jeez,
this
yes, exactly.
segment.
Where can the other patients find you?
The Real Rejects, pretty much every format. YouTube, Twitter, and YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, The Real Rejects. And I have my own Twitter at the Greg Alba and Instagram at the Greg Alba. And we have a YouNow account at the Greg Alba.
Nice.
Live stream there.
And you put the Greg Alba because someone else was Greg Alba
I just
first.
noticed some people say the, and I was like,
Oh,
that's the only way to make
like
I want to be the official
the
Greg Alba.
405,
Yeah, exactly.
the 10,
Yeah.
the 5,
I
as
took
we
inspiration from
say.
freeways. Yeah. That was
Hmm.
my thing.
That is a Southern California thing that we like to do. For those that do not know, we like to put the in front
The
of it because it is an actual thing.
the
So we have to.
Brienne.
Yeah, that's right. You can find me at Miss Movies on Twitter, Miss_movies on Instagram, and that's pretty much it. I don't really do Snapchat, but I have one.
I don't do Snapchat.
It's Miss_movies. I find that Instagram is starting to like eclipse
Yeah.
Snapchat because they have their stories now,
Yeah.
and there's going to be some other stuff rolling out next year that I'm not allowed to talk about that I know about for some reason. That's going
Nice.
to be like, sorry, Snapchat,
I
you
honestly,
done, son.
the only reason I got like the Instagram and the Twitter was because they said if you're gonna do YouTube, you got to get those, and so
Mm.
that's why I got it. But there are times where I just delete those apps because I'm like I get
So
like
hard.
anxiety if I'm on it too long.
Right?
It's like the constant gratification or approval and like how fast the images are and
I
everything.
know.
It's just too much. It's information overload for
It
me.
is.
And I'm like, oh man, I can't. So sometimes I like delete it for like a week before I go back on to like
I know.
post something.
I know. I need to definitely detox from Twitter, but it is hard.
It's hard. That's
It's
the
hard.
scary thing too. It's like I hate it when I'm like in conversation or watching something, and then I'm like going on social media. It
Yeah.
takes me out of the moment.
It does. I need to work on it, definitely. Maybe over the break. Although over the break could be hard because I have kids.
Yeah.
Randall Sand says she died of cardiac arrest by accident from mixed drugs for an infection she had. Well,
I
that is
see.
sad news.
Randall Sins been Sands sins.
Cinema sins.
Randall Sands has been
Cinema
commenting a
sins.
lot. That's kind of you guys, TJ Dex. Thank you guys for tuning in.
And Jeff Reich. I don't know if I said that right. So sorry about that, friend. All right. We're going to close it up. Thank you for joining us today. I'll see you next time on our next session, which is tomorrow with Jason Inman. All right. Bye. 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 Bye.